Good afternoon. My name is Fred Rue, and I'm the primary caregiver for my wife, Paige, who was diagnosed with intrahepatic CC in the spring of 2018. My talk today will have a theme centered around the word rare and how the rare events in my life have directly impacted my ability and my family's ability to care for Paige. To start with, I kind of have a confession to make. It's kind of on a lighter note, but I was born with a stuttering problem. It is kind of rare. It's estimated 1% of the world's population lives with a stuttering problem. So I apologize in advance if I have any issues speaking today. But I think we all will agree when we were first diagnosed with CC, the word was extremely hard to pronounce and equally as hard to spell. But as a stutterer, there are certain sounds that you have problems with, and you try to avoid those sounds in normal speech, and you think ahead for alternative words to say. The diagnosis of CC itself was terrible, as we all know. But as a stutterer, when I first saw that word, it was loaded with all kind of problem sounds for me. But I'm getting better at saying them. And even though there are many times when bile duct cancer comes out a lot smoother than cholangiocarcinoma. So a little bit about ourselves. Paige and I were married in 1989, and over the next 12 years, we were blessed with 3 boys and 1 girl. As you can tell, I married way over my head, but during the 90s and the years in the early 2000s, life was pretty typical. We were very busy and overall fairly healthy, but in keeping with the rare theme, our lives changed greatly in 2008. Well, after several years of failing to thrive and confusion about what was going on with his health, my oldest son, James, was diagnosed with atypical progeria. This is related to progeria, the rapidly aging disease. There are less than 200 progeria patients worldwide, and they typically pass away by the age of 13 or so with age-related diseases. There are even fewer patients with my son's diagnosis of atypical progeria. So his struggles are not as well defined as classical progeria patients. He shares many of the life-threatening issues progeria patients experience, but thankfully not all, as he turns 30 this year and recently wrote a Median article regarding how aging occurs in his life. This was the first major challenge to our family, and Paige was an excellent caregiver to James and each of us as we navigated through the numerous surgeries and appointments and specialists around the country. Reduced support from the Progeria Research Foundation, a foundation that was also started by someone who lost a loved one with a rare disease. This organization is filled with patients, caregivers, and doctors from around the world providing hope to those in desperate need. And this support from the Progeria Foundation foreshadowed the same feelings of hope and support we would receive from CCF in 2018. We would need that family strength once again in the summer of 2013 when our son Will was killed in an automobile accident at the age of 19. This blow to our family totally knocked us on our knees, and in many cases like this, a family is torn apart. But by the grace of God, our family got stronger still. And our faith has been a big part of our lives over the years, and we leaned into that faith and we leaned on each other as we made our way through this painful time. So I share these events because they had a significant impact on my ability and my family's ability to care for my wife when she was ultimately diagnosed with CC in 2018. I think the scar tissues formed by these previous events helped strengthen us as a family and strengthened our relationship with God so that we could handle this next challenge. I'm not saying that it was easy dealing with this news of Paige's diagnosis. I can still hear my daughter's screams when she cried, "God, why does this have to happen to us again?" I'm convinced there are questions that we all have that cannot be answered on this side of the grave. So my role as a caregiver officially started in the spring of 2018. And after dealing with some odd digestive issues, some occasional pain in her stomach and right shoulder, Paige went to see her doctor. He thought for sure she needed her gallbladder removed, but could not schedule surgery without an ultrasound. The next day we had an ultrasound, and that afternoon she received a call saying that Her gallbladder was okay, but there was a spot on the liver. "Don't worry about it," he said. "There's lots of folks that have benign spots on their liver." The scans that followed proved that there was something to worry about. So with the help from my cousin's son, who's a doctor in Chicago, we connected with the Medical University of South Carolina. More scans and a biopsy led to the diagnosis of stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma. The tumor board met the following week and confirmed these initial results. It was inoperable. Start GemCis at your local oncologist back home. The Medical University of South Carolina is about a 2-hour drive from our home, so for about a week we drove back and forth numerous times. The realization of what we were dealing with was sinking in, and the occasional country music song or Christian music song on the radio would just trigger a flood of tears as we started to comfort each other, not knowing what the future held. We met with our local oncologist, and he had only treated one CC patient in the past, and the results were not what we wanted to hear. So we began looking around for a second opinion. While doing so, Paige started to prepare for chemo locally. She got her port in the next week. And one thing she did regarding her port that I think is worth passing on, my perspective, is that she had her port installed in her left bicep rather than in her upper chest. She's kind of thin up here, and when the doctor gave her the option to have it installed in her inside bicep, we went with that. And it has proven to be a good choice, as a lot of nurses are surprised to see it, and they didn't even know that it was an option. We started chemo as soon as possible. One Friday early on, we came home from treatment late in the afternoon, and it was rainy and dreary, and Paige wasn't feeling good. So she went back to sit in her recliner and was accompanied by her best friend, Sam. I left a voicemail message earlier that week with the CCF Foundation asking for a call. It was a new patient. The phone rang, and a woman on the other end introduced herself and began to tell me her story as a long-term survivor. I interrupted her midstream, and with tears in my eyes, I asked Melinda Bikini if she could repeat that story for my wife because she needed to hear it. And that was the first little bit of hope for us. We went through treatment the rest of the summer. Paige used the cold cap therapy as much as she could, and it proved to be successful for her. As you can tell, it didn't help me much, but it did work for her. With help from CCF and Lisa Crane, we were able to get an appointment with Dr. Milan Javli at MD Anderson that August. After reviewing the scans, Dr. Javli looked at us and said, "Paige, my dear, has anybody mentioned resection?" Our mouths fell open, and we realized that we had come to the right place. It appeared that Dr. Javli, after seeing thousands of cholangio patients, thought resection was a possibility. It would take just the right surgeon, but he wanted to explore it further. The surgical team at MD Anderson could not fit Paige in for about another 2 months. But as luck would have it, rare again as it may be, my cousin's son in Chicago, who had counseled us early in those days, his name is Dr. Marshall Baker. He just so happens to be married to Dr. Talia Baker at the University of Chicago Medical. Talia and her associate, Dr. John Fung, are arguably two of the best liver transplant surgeons in the world. Their group at the University of Chicago Medical also supports the cholangio community, and Dr. Baker could fit Paige in 10 days. So in September of 2018, Paige successfully had 75% of her liver resected, along with numerous lymph nodes. Following surgery, Paige started GemCap, or Gemzolota, for 6 months. It was kind of a mop-up treatment, we thought. But in August of 2019, a spot showed up on her diaphragm. A biopsy confirmed that it was reoccurrence, and a thoracic surgeon at MD Anderson removed that node successfully. And he told Paige after surgery to go live her life. She had no more cancer in her body. Dr. Javli, though, felt, just to be sure, that 8 cycles of modified Folfox would be the next best step. Unfortunately, in February of 2020, after 8 cycles, several new nodes were noticed in some pretty expensive real estate near the original site of her tumor. We switched to GemCis and Abraxane for 2 months, and thankfully saw a little shrinkage. The nodes had pulled away from both the portal vein and the bowel just enough that Dr. Jolly thought that IMRT might be a good next step. So last summer, in the middle of all the COVID stuff, we had 5 weeks of radiation treatment and Xylota back at MD Anderson. It appeared to be successful immediately following the treatment, but we had to wait a couple months to let the radiation keep doing its thing. Scans in the fall of 2020 revealed that maybe they did not kill one of the nodes as completely as they thought. So in December, this past December, we went back to Chicago and Dr. Baker resected that node with the aid of a nanoknife. The pathology confirmed it was malignant and clear margins were achieved. So that brings us to today. 2 weeks ago, we returned to MD Anderson for post-surgery scans. Paige has been off of all systemic treatment since last July. Unfortunately, scans revealed a couple more little spots we have to deal with, and we're working with the doctors at MD Anderson and the University of Chicago to figure out a plan. As we all know, this journey is like a roller coaster. Dr. Jolly told us early on that fighting this disease is sometimes like playing the old whack-a-mole game. As one thing pops up, you whack it back down and you move on. You keep living your life one day at a time. This fight, as we all know, is scary. We all want to avoid the reality of what might happen. But I've kind of come to the conclusion that aren't we all kind of stage 4 something? There's a song from Kenny Chesney that he sings about it called Everybody Wants to Go to Heaven. But the hook line on the song is, just don't want to go now. So I played a lot of team sports and individual sports when I was growing up, and I personally felt stronger when I was part of a team. And a good visual representation of that team concept in audio is that a middle C on a piano sounds good. But when you add the third and the fifth and the seventh and the ninth, you get a beautiful sounding team. Because of the struggles we have been through as a family the last 13 years and the way that we dealt with those battles, we naturally took this team approach to care for Paige. Now on this team, my wife, Paige, is the MVP. And thankfully, I'm one of the starters along with my kids and immediate family and friends and patient advocates, local oncologists, and wonderful nurses. We have 2 first-class assistant coaches in Dr. Jolly and Dr. Baker, and we ask God to be our coach every day. We play in the CCF League, and as a family, we dove headlong into the supportive nature of the CCF organization, participating in the t-shirt design competition, weekly presentations, fundraising, webinars, the awareness last month, and even last year's lip sync contest. Here's a picture of my daughter and my niece from their video that won the contest last year. So by nature, I'm kind of I guess I'm like a lot of guys, I'm kind of stubborn. And if something came up in my life prior to 2008, I would say a lot of times, no, I don't need any help. I can handle this on my own. But I'm convinced if I took that approach in 2018, my wife would not be here now. She's alive because we did not stop with our local oncologist. They're caring and supportive and all, but they did not have the experience that we needed for this rare disease. She's from the South. She's got that accent and all going on, and she tries to be as sweet as the sweet tea we drink down here. She was hesitant at first to go elsewhere. She didn't want to kind of hurt the doctor's feelings. But she will tell you today, smile while you do it, but if you are in doubt in any way, get a second opinion at a major cancer center. One good thing that has come out of this COVID situation is the leveraging of online tools to replace in-person contact. I think it is easier now to have your case reviewed remotely at most major cancer centers. I don't know why we are still in this fight, but again, from my perspective, I think God has a plan. I don't understand that plan. I don't know what that plan is, but that's where I rest my faith. Pardon another music from the country music genre, but I'm from the South too, and I like the music. And there's this popular country song where a young single mother hits a sheet of ice while driving home to see her parents, and the car goes into a spin with her baby sound asleep in the back seat. She loses total control. She throws her hands up in the air and she says, "Jesus, take the wheel." Again, I'm not trying to preach, but we have done this so many times over the last 13 years, and it helps us. I don't know how many more blows we'll have to take on the rest of our journey, but as they come, we will continue to do the same thing because we don't know any other way to get through it. So in summary, my story today discussed some rare things in my life that were bad and some rare things that in my life that are good. There is one final rare comment that I'd like to mention that I consider good, and it's a good blessing that I've experienced with my wife as her caregiver. Most of us fall in love with our spouse or our partner in our 20s and our 30s, and the love and the excitement and the joy and the intimacy is great. But I can honestly say that going through this with my wife has changed my life forever. The love and the joy and the true intimacy that we've experienced the last 3 years fighting this rare cancer surpasses the wonderfulness of even those early days. This love is rare, and the reason behind the love is Christ-like, and in my opinion, is eternal. Thank you for letting me share my perspective. My prayer for all of us is that we find hope today, and that if not, we find hope tomorrow. God bless.